Guides your students to have a clear intention or purpose for their practice. This helps people to begin wherever they are. So maybe they just had a really crazy busy day at work. Maybe they just came from a really nasty argument with their spouse. Maybe, depending on wherever they came from, this helps them to begin wherever they are. And then it also helps to be clear of where you are going. Okay? So in our sequence, we have us starting out with Vajrasana and Sukhasana. So we're going to do Sukhasana first. Sukhasana is similar to, crisscross applesauce or Indian style pose. The difference is though we don't want to cross off the legs. So we want to keep the energy flowing. We don't want to cross anything off, especially too because the asana and the pranayama is preparing the body and the mind to be able to sit for long periods of meditation. We want to be able to sit here without things falling asleep. We don't want to cut off the circulation. So Sukhasana keeps us from cutting off the circulation. Now, I will say from personal experience, I got into a habit of sitting one way all the time, and I ended up doing some damage to my hip. So you always want to make sure that you switch it up every once in a while, especially if you have your class sitting here, maybe you do your setting your intention, and then maybe you want to have them switch the legs, halfway through, so that we're making sure that we're balancing out both sides of the body. Okay. Also for personal practice, when you go to sit, you might notice you always sit one certain way. Try to sit the opposite way and counterbalance that, okay? So, Sukhasana, also known as easy pose or half lotus, the benefits are it opens the hips and creates a sense of balance throughout the body. And if ever I go too fast and you want me to slow down or repeat something, just let me know. It assists in elimination. It creates a stable base for meditation. It amplifies the flow of prana.
At the beginning, you said it opens the hips, right?
Mm-hmm. So contraindications are usually like, these are issues that people should not be doing this pose, or it could cause injury or pain and things like that. So if the person has pain or tightness in the knees, the ankles, the hip joints, they should stick with modifications.
Say that again.
Yep. Pain or tightness in the knees, ankles, hip joints should stick with modifications.
Like after they've tried a block and stuff.
Well, that's where we're going to go next, is we're going to go into the modifications. And so one of the things is right now, like I'm sitting on top of a block. So this would be a modification because this helps to open up the hips. It also helps to keep the hips higher than the knees to help with circulation. It also helps to keep the spine alert and erect. So they say an erect spine is an alert spine, because sometimes when we start to round through the back, we can get drowsy, right? So to stay alert, we want to sit up nice and tall. And the block really helps to stack the vertebrae and keep us sitting up nice and tall. Now, a couple other modifications would be, of course, I'm sitting on top of a block, but you'd have two other blocks under each knee. So here we are, the people who have the tightness in the knees, the ankles, the hips. You can place blocks underneath the knees to support the knees. If you don't have that many blocks to be able to offer each person 3 blocks, 1 to sit on and 2 for both knees, you can use blankets. You can roll blankets underneath the knees. You can have them sit on a bolster and have the 2 blocks underneath the knees. Or if you have no blocks, you can have them sit on a bolster, roll 2 blankets underneath the knees. And that might look like this, just a rolled blanket on each side. Now, sitting on top of the block or a bolster, raising the hips higher than the knees would be considered a modification too, okay? Some adjustments that you can give them is to place a knee in the back and the hands on the shoulders. And I would love to be able to demonstrate if someone would like to be my model. Anybody want to be my model? Okay. All right, so I'm going to have you just sit like you, well, actually, I'm going to have you go sideways. So sitting on the block with the knee, putting the blankets wherever they are underneath your knees. I'm going to steal this out of here. Okay, so one of the ways would be to gently press your knee here and pull the shoulders back. Gently. So this lifts and opens, okay? That is one adjustment. You can C-shape the hand on the neck, C-shape the hand on the chest to lift and expand. So you might just here and tell them just to lift and open. That's another gentle one. Thank you, Dylan. And so just so you have that to write down, I'm going to repeat it. Place a knee in the back gently and hands on shoulders. Lift and open. C-shape the hand on the neck. Or like for you, I used upper back. And then a C-shape. On the chest to lift and expand. So just a gentle touch and telling them to lift and expand, they'll do the work on their own. That might be your first adjustment. And then if that doesn't work, then to stick the knee and pull back with the hands. Now we always want to start with verbal cues first. So we want to elongate through your spine, open up through your chest, draw the shoulders back and down. You try to get them to lift and open with your verbal cues first. And if they're still not getting it or they're still struggling, then you would physically mold them. And of course, you always want to ask people first, are you okay with physical touch? Or you might even say, and they might change their mind too. So even if you're like, oh yeah, that person's usually okay with physical touch, before you go to touch them, it might be a good habit to get into. Is it okay if I physically adjust you? Is it okay if I manually adjust you or hands-on adjust you? Something to let them know and to get their permission. Because let's say normally they are okay with physical touch, but let's say today they had a really bad day and they just don't want to be touched. One day can vary from the next day. And so a normal person or a person that normally you touch and adjust all the time doesn't want to be touched that day, and you have a negative, they have a negative reaction or whatever, so you just want to prevent any of that kind of stuff. We want for people to unravel and relax and decompress. We don't want them tensing up. And sometimes when you go to touch someone that isn't prepared for it, will tense up, they'll, have that reaction. So, okay. Does everybody feel pretty good about Sukhasana? Okay. So the next one is Vajrasana, and this is the kneeling pose, also known as hero pose. The benefits: it creates flexibility and alignment in hips, legs, and knees. It opens the hips and stretches the quadriceps. Yeah. It creates flexibility and alignment in the hips, legs, and knees. I think it also helps with flexibility in the ankles, because when I first started doing yoga, I could not sit like this. It hurt my ankles so bad. But now I could sit here for long periods of time. But when I first started, so I feel like I have a lot more flexibility in my ankles here.
What's the pose where the toes are? Oh, broken toe pose? That one? Yeah, that one.
That's a good one for plantar fasciitis. Yeah.
Sorry.
So if you ever have someone who's like, oh, I have plantar fasciitis, give them this one and then tell them to roll tennis ball.
I also heard hero pose would be the one where you're like that. Your butt's on the ground.
So in yin, they call it saddle. But yin also gives it different terms, like forward fold in yin is called caterpillar, so.
Oh, okay.
So you could see that as, hero's pose. It would just be a different variation of it. Yeah.
Okay. And in general, yin has different words for like similar things. It's just like a modified version.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's very controversial. Like, I think to me, it's just much more confusing than it already is. Like, why did they do that? You know what I mean? Like, Supta Baddha Konasana, butterfly pose. But it's really bound angle. So it has the Sanskrit name, Supta Baddha Konasana, right? Supta Baddha Konasana. And then the English term is bound angle. But then in yin, it's butterfly pose.
Huh.
So it makes it like kind of confusing.
Yeah. Too many.
Yeah. Why don't you give one English term for each, but
Okay.
yeah. So then it massages the reproductive organs.
And the second one was it stretches the quads.
Opens hips and stretches quadriceps. It gives pelvic stabilization. Stabilization. Am I saying that right? And strengthens the low back. So a contraindication for this would be knee and ankle pain would require modification. Okay? And then the modifications would be to sit on the block, placing the block underneath the bum, between the legs. It lifts the body up off so you're not weight bearing on those ankles. So I had to use this for a long time until I worked my ankles to the point where I could put my body weight on them. So sitting on a block, placing a blanket under the ankles. So I'll just demonstrate. And you're more than welcome to grab props and try this for your own, self, for your body, so you can experience. But placing a blanket underneath the ankles, it helps just to cushion it pretty much. Just to provide cushion so it's not the hard floor, not your ankles digging into the hard floor. Okay, and then placing the blanket behind the knees, like this. This is similar to I'm taking this thing off. It's in my way. It's similar to placing the block because it kind of lifts that body weight. It provides like a spreading, a spreading sensation in the legs, and also lifts the body a little bit off of weight bearing so much. The ankles.
I like that.
Yeah, isn't that nice? Okay. Now, extending one leg and placing a block under extended leg. So this might be one variation that you do. You could even place the block underneath the bum. So if both knees, if that's too much, you might say, just try one side. And then make sure that they switch to balance out the body. So similar how like saddle, sometimes both legs is too much. And so we do one leg at a time. I know Marissa does that a lot in hot yoga. She used to just do saddle. And I was like, you need to like switch it up for us and do one side at a time. Because some of us can't do it, So, so this is.
It's like reclined hero.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's like.
Oh, okay.
It's like this.
And I don't lay all the way back.
And then this would be all the way back. So what we started to do is just offer one leg. And a lot of times people might be able to come all the way down with just one leg. Or, modification up on the elbows. Or just the hands. So doing one side sometimes is easier for people than just taking them both legs. So if you're ever offering Vajrasana, you might want to do that one side at a time, just depending on who your clients are and what they're complaining of or what they have going on,
So does the hero pose help with learning like bow pose? I can't do bow pose with my legs.
Bow?
Like bow, because it's kind of like your legs are going back. Like
Yeah, you're starting to stretch this quadricep to be able to bring that foot up a little higher in bow pose. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have another one that's more intense, so it'll get you there faster.
Yeah, because I can't do both legs at the same time.
Do you guys want to try it?
Yeah.
Can we pause this? Okay. So we went over the modifications for Vajrasana and the contraindications. So the adjustments would be to place the knee in the back and the hands on the shoulders, similar to how we did on the Sukhasana, right? And C-shaping the hand on the neck or upper back and the hand on the chest to lift and expand. So very similar. It's the same adjustments pretty much for either seated pose. Okay, so we get into, I'll go over child's pose next and then we'll go over the warm-ups. But so child's pose is one that you want to introduce to your students as a resting pose. So I always say, I guide them into child's pose and then I'm like, hey, no matter what's going on in the yoga class, no matter what class you're taking, no matter who the teacher is, honor your body. If you need a break, you can find, you can take a child's pose at any time. So if everyone else is running through 10 sun salutations or 5 vinyasas or whatever they're doing, and you're like, whoa, I feel lightheaded, or oh, I should have ate something today, or oh, my back is hurting me, or I'm feeling really emotional, or whatever you are experiencing, honor that and take a child's pose. So many times, in our world and even in yoga, the ego steps in and is like, no, you push through that pain. Oh, no, you better keep up with the next person, the person next to you. Or, oh, what are you doing? Don't be a baby, or, keep going, So the ego really is that inner judge, and it's the voice in there. So we want to try to integrate and love that shadow self, that ego, but we don't want it to run the show, right? So it's about, yoga's about honoring the body and not letting the ego run the show. So honor your body and teach that to your students too, that doesn't matter. It's not about keeping up with the Joneses. So who cares what the person on the mat next to you is doing? This is your practice. It's a personal practice. This is your journey. Your journey's not going to look like their journey because it's yours, So we can't stress that enough into our students, because we got to break away those old tyrannical, patriarchal ways of being. And to do that is to start by softening and loving ourselves and honoring ourselves and being patient with ourselves and stepping into our own authenticity. And what that looks like means it doesn't look like the person next to you. So, but some of that is so programmed into us that it kind of comes natural, sadly. So we have to the more self-aware we become, the more we can break away that, and the more we'll notice it. And the more we notice it, the more we can start to shift it, right? Okay, so child's pose, the benefits are good flexion for the spine, the hips, and the knees. It massages the abdominal organs, kidneys, and adrenal glands. It's good for cramps and constipation. And it heals, relaxes, and rejuvenates the entire body. It can also be emotionally calming. And sometimes when you do have someone that is maybe getting emotional, that's one of the most, we want to normalize emotions, and crying, but sometimes that's even hard to do. So sometimes just coming down in child's pose, you kind of almost have a little bit of privacy, so you can, but if someone needs to leave the room, that's fine too. I tell people you can leave the room, but during Shavasana, please don't leave the room. Oh my God. If you need to leave early, leave before Shavasana. So the reason I say that, and I should probably disclose this, is when people are in Shavasana, their eyes are closed and they're in a very vulnerable position. They're lying on their back, their eyes are closed. This is vulnerable. And for people who might have been abused or been through trauma and stuff like that, when you have people in a vulnerable position, and then you have people walking around and moving their stuff or putting their props away or opening and closing the door, that makes those people uneasy. That makes those people have to sit up or open their eyes or look around, because for them to feel safe, they need to know what's going on, And so it really disrupts their relaxation process or period of time, their Shavasana. And those people are usually the ones who need that time the most, So, yeah. Trial and error, I've learned a lot just because I didn't know, until I was dealt with certain situations. And I had a lady who totally left in the middle. And all I said was hey, next time, either leave before Shavasana, or let me know if you have to leave early. And she ended up sending me this horrible email, what a horrible person I was for calling her out in front of everybody. And I whispered it, because I didn't want to disrupt the class. So I'm hey, blah, blah, blah. That's not how I was talking, because she was right here. And so, yeah, and then it became a very public thing on media. She posted our emails and did a whole review. And then there were strangers that I had never even met, who never even stepped foot into my business, were leaving me reviews, and totally ruined my 5-star score. So yeah, it was an experience. And so I try to tell people now, hey, if you need to leave early, just let me know. Or if you need to leave early, leave before we go into Shavasana. If you need to leave now, leave now. We're about to go into Shavasana. Those little things that you can just put out there to kind of let people know, so that you have your boundaries and rules set, for your class. Yeah. Okay. Contraindication. So use modifications during pregnancy. So if they have a baby in the way, let's say they have a belly, they can still take child's pose. But you would definitely want to have like a bolster and a block. So, let's say you have a belly here. They can come down like this. This can still be a child's pose. Or, this. So that, they're up a little higher to give room for the belly, but they're still getting a lot of the benefits and things of the pose. So those with knee, neck, or low back pain. So the knees, you can cushion with a blanket if they have knee pain. Putting a blanket underneath the knees can help. If they have neck pain, you can always bring in the block to raise the head up off the earth. So a lot of times in child's pose, we're sinking down like this. And if this is bothering their neck, then lift the head with the block or a bolster. And you can lift it as high as you want. You know the different levels. So level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1, level 2, level 3. So as high as you need to if need be. And then low back pain, okay? So a lot of times you'll hear people say, widen the knees, touch the big toes, shift the hips back, okay? So this is great for opening up the hips, but this has no support for the low back. So if you have people, and you might even want to give the option and teach in a way that they have the option, which way would you like to take child's pose? Bringing the knees together creates a shelf, then supports the lower back. So if people have lower back pain, they shouldn't be like this. They should be like this. Does that make sense? Then this supports that. Okay, so we did the block underneath the forehead, the blanket underneath the knees. Another one is to provide the blanket behind the knees, kind of like we did with Vajrasana. And then to come back. And, I don't even know what this does, to be honest with you. I mean, you guys can try it and see how it feels for you. I mean, it might relieve some knee stuff. But I don't really, it's gotta be a knee thing.